How's it? Welcome back to Basil's Garage, where we are at part 7 of Billy Bob's Backyard Budget Build in the Bay of Plenty. So today we're going to have a little bit of a look at the rear axle, which we've completely finished now, and also a little bit about removing the governor. So we'll just do a bit of that stuff today. So we'll come over this way and have a bit of a look-see. So this is the completed rear axle, ready to go. So we'll start on this side with the brake here. So what we've done is we've mounted the brake onto a 50 by 50 square piece of steel here, and what that's done is I've drilled holes in through the side of it. So you can see in here I've drilled a couple of holes in here, and those holes allow me to put the Allen key through, and I can undo the bolts to take the caliper off. So I'm going to undo these bolts. There's 2 bolts in there holding the caliper together, so we'll just undo those, and that one's now on the floor. And undo this one. So what it means is we can take the caliper off easily if we need to in place. So that's the caliper. So that's the twin part caliper that we've used. So we've used the original mounting part and we bolted it onto that, to the 50mm there. So the way we did this was we basically offered everything up on here. We put the caliper on here. We made sure everything was square and straight. We then measured the distance and we put the spacer in here, and it all mounts up nice and square. We've got to check that it's square so the brake disc all works nicely. So I'll just throw this over here for the moment. So the next part is obviously the hubs. Now you can see we've got little spacers on here. These spacers are just bits of tubing, and what they do is they enable us to set up the whole axle to be the right distance apart. So we'll just take that off there, pull that one off there. We can pull the brake disc off there as well, and there's another spacer on there. So what that does is enable us to set everything up so it's nice. Now I've cut the Keyways in here. Now my mill's not the most amazing mill around, but it sort of does the job. You can see we've got 2 different sizes here. So the outer hubs have got quite a big keyway in them, and the inner hubs I've put a much smaller keyway into them. Okay, so I've cut the Keyways here. So I'm quite lucky I've got a brooch. I'll just grab that to show you what it looks like. It is actually over here. Sorry about that, people. So this is what a brooch looks like. Okay, specially designed to cut Keyways into holes. You make up one of these, that goes into here. This is not the right size for there, obviously. It goes into there, and then you basically put that in there and you push it down with a press, and each time you push it down it takes a small cut. You put a spacer behind it and it takes another small cut, and that is the way that you can cut Keyways. These are not overly expensive on Wish or AliExpress. You can buy them locally, about $100 each, and then you buy the adapters or make the adapters yourself, and then you can basically cut your Keyways wherever you want into whatever piece you want. So I've cut the Keyways in this using the brooch and the other part that goes in here. So that's that part done. So then you can see the mounting is all done. Bolts through there and comes through the inside from there. So now we'll come around to the other side. So you can sort of see now what we've done is we've got the chain and the tensioner. So what I've done with the tensioner here is this is actually a skateboard wheel. So I had a couple of those skateboard wheels lying around. Really and honestly, there's not a lot of load on this part here because there's the same for the belt. The wheel spins one way, one way's tight, the other way's slightly loose. So I've actually got on my own mower, I've got a plastic pulley off the front of a belt tensioner on a BMW because I have one of those lying around. And I've used that for quite a few years and it's never caused me a problem. So skateboard wheel, another way to do it. Fairly easy. What I've done here is I'll just remove this so you can see. There's basically a bolt and a spacer. And the bolt again comes out through the other side. So I can get it out of here. Where is it? So the bolt comes out, and on the other side of there I've got 2 channels so that the bolt sits inside, and so the bolt sits onto the 2 channels, so when you put it through it's actually locked, it can't turn. All you have to do is tighten up the spacer on that. So that's set that distance and set up our tensioner. So very simple, very cost effective way of doing a tensioner, and then obviously we can manually adjust it as we need to and just slide it up and down there. The next thing we've done is the same as the other side. We've got a spacer on here, and that enables us to get my Allen key. A minute ago, and I've now lost. I think it's this one. And do the Allen key. So this is the same, the hub, we've cut the slot in there for the keyway. There's a spacer on there to hold it at the right place. And then we have put these two pieces on here. And I think I just need to grab my bar and just take this off the bottom of here because it's a lovely fit. So the same thing with this, we've got the cog that came with it. Now I've made up a proper piece that slides over the shaft. I've had to turn the shaft down slightly smaller because it was a 25mm shaft, and the 25mm on the pulley is just not going to give enough room to weld it and for the belt to the chain to fit. So I've machined this down, put a keyway in it so that that will slide on there quite nicely and attach to the chain. So this is a 4-to-8 chain, and so that basically gives us everything we need to make the rear end complete. So milling these on here, you could probably do it with a drill press if you really wanted to, and cut your grooves in there. I've seen people do it with grinders, depending on how carried away you want to get. A drill press with an end mill, you can buy them off AliExpress and those sort of places, and Trade Me as well. Put them into your drill press, get a sliding one, take tiny wee bites, and you could cut that yourself if you needed to. So again, this is just a standard piece of 25mm 4140 bar, and then that's the axle. So we've now got everything complete in here. I do need to pull the right angle drive out, and the right angle drive needs to be stripped down and checked inside, and then make sure that there's no problems inside there. Look at the seals, and then refill it up with some oil, not grease, so and put a vent on it as well. So that's another thing to do. So while that's been sitting there, if we come over this way, I've actually started pulling the engine apart because we want to check that the engine's going to be okay and not have to worry about it. So what we've done is we've pulled all the covers off the engine. You don't need a lot of tools to do this. The cylinder heads come off. So the cylinder head's a bit black and a bit yucky inside here, so we'll clean all that up and make it all look nice. We'll put a new head gasket on, but there's no damage in here, no problems that we can see with the cylinder head. We've looked inside here, inside the piston, and it actually doesn't look too bad, the bore. There's a slight bit of wear in it, but nothing really major to worry about. So what we'll probably do is we'll probably hone this out and put new rings on it, because we don't know how many hours it's done. The rings might be worn out, so we'll pull it out and measure up that. We've also pulled the valves out. So these are the two valves. The bigger one is the inlet, the smaller one is the exhaust, and here's the two ports here. So these sit in here, and the valves seal on these little seats. So we'll recut those seats and clean them all up to make sure we've got good sealing in there, because it's not going to go very well if these seats aren't sealed and they aren't very good. And obviously we'll clean it all up and make it all look nice. So the other thing to worry about with these engines is quite often people ask about removing the governor. So to remove the governor, if you have a look around this side here, you can see that this is where the governor is attached. Normally it's got some springs off to the carburetor and that sort of stuff. So take that off completely, undo the bolts all around the back here. Obviously you have to have pulled off the flywheel and everything else that's attached to it, so all you've got is the pieces here. Undo the bolts around here, and then with a little bit of precision that comes off quite easily, and then we can see inside the motor. Very, very simple inside here, single cylinder. So the things to note here are these little marks. These two marks, when you are disassembling the engine, those marks need to line up. Okay, really important that they line up, because that's how you set your cam timing. If that's not right, the piston's not going to be in the right place when the valve's open and all sorts of things don't work. This part here, this is a two-part thing. It's got a oil slipper here. So the idea of this is this spins around in the oil and lops the oil up so that things don't seize. Now this part here is the governor. So we're going to knock these little pins out, remove those steel pieces, but we're going to leave this attached to that, and this needs to go back in, otherwise the engine will stop turning after a while because there's no oil in it. And I know that because I've done it once before, so don't forget to put this back in. The other part that's here, this is the actual governor lever. So normally what happens is as this spins, it pushes on this lever and it turns and gives you more power while you're running. Now you don't want these left in here, because as the RPM goes up and you're working them a bit harder, they can fall apart and cause you drama. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the the cam out, we're going to take the crank out, take this pieces out here, take everything else out. We're going to be left with this brass piece here. What we're going to do is we're then going to knock that brass piece out because it's just pressed in there, and then we're going to tap and put a bolt in here. So I'll show you that pretty soon. Okay, so as you can see here, this is the bushing that the governor sits in. Now, all I'm going to do is, this is just basically knocked into here. So turn it up on its side, get yourself a punch if you've got the right size punch, but I didn't, so I've got a bolt that fits nicely in there. Get yourself a decent size hammer, and it'll come out. Okay, so yeah, pretty rough and ready, but they just fall out easy as. Then you want to grab yourself a tap like this. This is a 10 by 1.5. Oh, my goodness, that's not very clever. And then I've got a bolt that goes with it. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to run the tap through here, make a thread into there, then I'm going to get the bolt, put a washer on there, probably a aluminium washer or something like that, put a bit of thread sealer on here, wind that in there, and then that's going to completely blank off the governor with no issues with that at all. And then we're going to grab the governor, as I say, we're going to take these bits off, and then we can put the governor back in again when we're finished. So I'm going to leave it there for today. I'm going to put some new rings on the piston. They don't look too bad, but I think we're going to replace them anyway. Just would be a good idea. We don't know how long they've been in there. We'll give the piston a clean up, make it all look nice again. We looked inside here for the bearing, and the bearing was pretty good. There's no marks on here, and there's no marks on the crankshaft as well. So we're pretty good. I mean, it's yeah, it's going to be fine. The tolerance in these things are huge, so it's going to be all good. So we'll put that down there. Yeah, that's sort of it for today. And you can have a look inside the bore. So I've taken it out. The bore doesn't look too bad, but we'll hone it anyway, just because it'll help the new rings bed in again. So, all right. So that's basically it for Bez's Garage today. Hope you're enjoying what we're doing. As I say, if you've got any questions, hit me up in the comments. Again, we haven't spent any money yet, so the budget stays the same. Obviously, once we get the rings sorted and a few bits and things we need for there, gaskets and that, we'll add those into it. Other than that, we're all good to go, and thanks for being at Bez's Garage.